It's Vancouver's podcast on the Canada's Podcast Network.
I am super excited to have Andrew with me today. Andrew Gordon is a shareholder of a company called Kiaro. It's a cannabis retail brand, and it derives from the Italian word, and I'm totally going to get this wrong, Andrew, so you can correct me, but Chiarofcuro?
Curious Kiaro. Yeah.
Chiarofcuro, I love it, which is, the Italian meaning is to emerge from darkness into the light. He's currently serving as Senior Vice President of Retail Operations and Community, and he specializes in organizational development, public affairs, community partnership, and industry performance. He's got a degree in political science, which would probably be a handy thing to happen in this sector right now. Also a graduate of BCIT, so British Columbia Institute of Technology's nonprofit management program. Andrew has successfully led the community Chiaro integration efforts for a number of private retailers across Canada, worked with a diverse array of patients, consumers, and regulators to build accountable, community responsive and financially sustainable cannabis retail models. Pretty interesting right now, of course, galvanized by the prospects of cannabis legalization in Canada. Andrew is personally passionate about working with community stakeholders across the country to help reduce social stigma and abate pharmaceutical drug dependence within communities, which, wow, that is, I love working with you, Andrew. It's going to be a lot of fun. Can you give us a tiny little soundbite of your entrepreneurial journey, other than what I've just read, on how we got to today at Kiaro?
Yeah, I mean, at the heart of it, I myself am a passionate cannabis patient and consumer. I used cannabis back in university to move away from a pretty debilitating pharmaceutical drug regimen. Cannabis proved to be a very natural and benign and beneficial offering to help treat my symptom profile for PTSD. So for me, it comes from a place of personal passion. And, looking at the entrepreneurial journey into cannabis, I mean, I did almost a decade of work in the nonprofit sector, raising money for hospital foundations and international medical missions, and really working for, community-focused causes of merit that really made a meaningful difference in people's lives and improved health and wellness in my community. And I set myself a mission statement coming out of university, or actually while I was in university, to really just focus on creating value and improving health and wellness in my community. And so I started in the nonprofit sector. A lot of the early retailers in the space were serving the community under the nonprofit model. So I came on board really to help with the governance structure with an organization that was going through the municipal licensing process here in Vancouver. And I really just fell in love with what dispensaries and what access for consumers meant. I really wanted to work to destigmatize what it was to be a cannabis consumer, and really to build, a sustainable enterprise in that space. And there was a sentiment and a feeling in the air that, legalization was upon us, and that, this was going to be a real thing and happen. And it was just a matter of, bringing professionals to the table to really deliver that in an effective and efficient way. So, my entrepreneurial journey really is I'm a patient, I'm a consumer, and I'm a rebel at heart. For me, this is a great social justice cause as well. I find, the prohibition of cannabis is one of those great social wrongs that I had a chance to participate in making right. And I'm proud to say that I played, a small part in the development of that process here in Canada. So for me, that's really what it's about, is just personal passion and just being a rebel at heart and pushing for positive, purposeful change in the community.
So that triggers lots of questions for me, but I have a curiosity. Prohibition and stigma used together, I think, is probably part of the problem. But what is the stigma that we need to overcome?
Well, it's really that kind of blanket perspective on, who a cannabis consumer is and what they represent and what they do with their lives, and really, looking at the history of prohibition in Canada, when you start to delve into that, you see a lot of kind of arbitrary, one-way, one-dimensional decision-making in terms of, really allowing, a plant to have an opportunity on the commercial, social, and political spectrum to have a chance to serve the greater public good. And, the history aside, Stigma is really about, meeting head on in a credible and considerate way, the ignorance, indifference, and inertia that we face as people who are passionate about the plant, about the movement, and about access for consumers or patients alike. And so just really being a great brand representative yourself and making sure that, despite the fact that you consume cannabis, the sky doesn't fall, and that you can be a great husband, a great dad, a great business person. I'm proud to say I've been married 12 years. I have a beautiful 5-year-old boy. I'm a shareholder and a significant contributor to the company, Kiaro, in a senior management role. And so I'm proud to represent that interest, and I really look to work with others that want to do the same and help others who are struggling rise up and really raise the profile of conversation and opportunity in the community. And so, the stigma we face is, that we're stoners, that we are, again, non-aspirational, incompetent, those types of things. And when you start reading and learning about, your endocannabinoid system and the power this has to really modulate homeostasis in your body, and just like if you have an iron deficiency or a vitamin C deficiency, you introduce a supplement to get up to a point of equilibrium and homeostasis, and that's the exact thing that's happening here with cannabis.
Right.
It's just the responsible use of that, and that is, accessing that from credible sources as possible, making sure that product is analytically tested and quality assured as much as you can as a consumer. Early on, that was difficult. Now it's great. That's one of the great promises of legalization, was be able to deliver value to consumers and to communities in that regard. And so you just, you work hard with people around you to create positive change and to represent cannabis consumers well. We're not here to blow smoke in people's face. We're here to have productive, positive conversations with regulators and community stakeholders. And I'm proud to say we're at the vanguard of that movement, and it's creating waves, and it's disrupting, again, that ignorance, indifference, and inertia that we're seeing around what cannabis means, commercially, politically, and socially.
Well, and if I could just throw a comment in there that, I have not historically been a consumer, but for the last 18 months, I've been doing research in anticipation of legalization in Canada, to find a little bit more research for myself about the business. And it's big business. It is big business.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
Even though we've come from an era of prohibition, I mean, that from the medical use or the multi-generational growers in Canada, BC Bud is world renowned, right? So
it is.
I think we have so many assets to build on here in Canada. I'm a little bit curious what your perspective is on, legalization. Is it a step in the right direction? Is it sort of crunched everything to a standstill? I mean, really, what is the impact that it's having on small business or big business in Canada?
Yeah, great question. I mean, legalization is a process. It's not an endpoint. Really, the work began October 17th of 2018. A lot of people in the industry that were from the legacy market really felt that was the great consummation point of all of their efforts, and that it would be green pastures and fields. I'm not sure everyone felt that way, but I felt a sense of that kind of collective accomplishment. And then that kind of angst around what's next and how do we realize this opportunity and maximize the yield for everybody. And with respect to, just to keep the scope tight here to small business, I mean, this is tremendous growth. I mean, under our feet right now in this province, there's a $5 to $7 billion industry in this province in small production, processing, and distribution. And that's on the illicit side. And we have, the opportunity through reducing the barriers to entry and modifications to regulation to allow that industry to come into the light, to flourish, and to really create jobs, have economic impact, drive economic diversification and revenue through taxes, and the trickle down of really, having a whole new industry blossom amongst other businesses.
Right.
In the communities that I've traveled to down south in Colorado or Nevada or California, sure, I see some great thriving cannabis businesses, but I also see a lot of thriving businesses around those cannabis businesses. You have a lot of young entrepreneurial spirit and energy in the air. And again, the pick and shovel businesses around cannabis, those ancillary services, represent, 3-4 times the economic impact value for Canadians. So it's definitely, it resonates beyond just the bounds of cannabis and cannabis consumers to really affect all industries. I mean, you're looking at, security, you're looking at legal, accounting, IT, and then within that, all of the amazing innovation that's going to happen as a result of the touch points with cannabis that really have yet to become sophisticated in their own right. So we got a long way to go. We're still 3 to 5 years from really realizing the initial aspirations and then building an industry on top of that. So a lot of stigma still at the regulatory level that we're dealing with in terms of advertising promotion. So as a small business, you definitely feel a little bit restricted, but to have the opportunity to come out into the light and really, begin to express yourself in a way that is positive and purposeful and shows that to the community by creating jobs, driving economic diversification and creating tax revenue is all positive gain, net gain for everyone.
Well, let me just ask, you touched on innovation as coming out of this process so far. What are you most excited about that you can foresee that down the track that maybe other people on the periphery, wouldn't be able to see for themselves? What does Andrew see?
Well, I mean, I really look at the emergence of 2.0 products, so drinks, beverages, edibles, non-combustibles in particular, as having tremendous influence and impact moving forward for the next 3 to 5 years. Not only just in terms of the revenues they're going to drive for the existing businesses in the cannabis space, and then some ancillary businesses that will emerge, consumption sites, hybrid licensing where cafes and theaters and things like that may be able to offer these types of non-combustible infused products. But the innovation and technology around that. And then to take a step further, the research and development, well, to take a step either behind or further, because it usually happens before and after. But the research and development, I mean, Canada is going to lead the world on this front. We're the first, G8 nation to embrace cannabis legalization and really realize the opportunity in a federally legal way, which really has ramifications all the way down, right down to the municipal level in terms of business and social gains and impacts. So, I'm excited for the research and development. I'm excited for these 2.0 products to really begin to compel and convert and cajole consumers into the regulated space, and allow, cannabis to really, come to ferment into its full potential. Again, having that full repertoire of products to be able to offer as a retailer, to be able to improve public health and safety by offering quality assured, analytically tested products, to be able to erode the presence of the illicit marketing communities and keep it out of the hands of young people. Those are goals that we look to meet every single day in our retail environments. And, we operate in multiple provinces, in Saskatchewan and here in British Columbia. And we're really proud to represent those interests and to create that value opportunity with the community.
So specifically, where are you operating?
Great question. So we are live and operational in Vancouver. We have a beautiful flagship store at Kingsway and Knight in East Vancouver. We have another location opening in Vancouver shortly in the spring. But currently up and operational, we're in Vancouver, we're in Victoria. We just opened there mid-January. Very excited to be a part of that community. I went to school at UVIC, and that's really where my love for cannabis was born, and where I really, turned away from, pharmaceuticals towards cannabis to really treat my needs for PTSD and really learn about the community of growers and people who've contributed to this industry. So that's wonderful. So Vancouver, Victoria, then we're operational in Port Moody here March 20th. So that's exciting to be in that community. The community there was extremely fastidious in terms of who they welcomed in, and we were proud to be one of 2 operators that they did.
Nice.
And then we are also open and operational in Saskatchewan. So we have a store in Saskatoon, one of my favorite cities in the world. And then we're also in La Ronge, which is about 3.5 hours north as you enter the boreal forest and region in Saskatchewan there. It's absolutely gorgeous. You're driving up there, it's like a Windows 98 screensaver with just rolling hills and clouds and blue sky. It's gorgeous. We also operate a wholesale business out there as well. So really meeting the needs of the majority of retailers in that province. So it's exciting to be up and operational in Canada and creating value for consumers.
And what's your, does the sort of open for business culture of a municipality have an impact on your growth plan?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at even licensing fees. I mean, they vary drastically across the various municipal centers that we operate in. In Vancouver, for instance, we're dealing with like a $33,000 license per year. In Victoria, it's substantially less, but it's still, I think it's around the neighborhood of 5,000. In Saskatoon, the first year was 20,000, and then renewal fee is only $85. So we saw some progress there as a result of some active lobbying that really informed the regulators. They welcomed us in for that feedback too, so I really compliment the city of Saskatoon in that regard. And then in La Ronge, we worked diligently right from the outset where the bylaws were formed, really painting the picture of what the reality of the regulated environment entailed, and showed that this was a business just like any other. And so we were able to establish a licensing fee in La Ronge of only $100. And they really saw, being, business proponents first, and not allowing the stigma to sway their opinion on, the opportunity to take advantage of a cannabis operator. And not to say that, municipalities that have high business fees are trying to take advantage, but they're definitely, I think, not quite understanding that, the enforcement and the kind of the fear mongering that a lot of people have around cannabis businesses in their community is completely unfounded. We create a tremendous amount of value in terms of keeping it out of the hands of young people, eroding the presence of the illicit market, and protecting public health and safety. And we actually see in the stats that are released subsequent to legalization, impairment, driving related impairment hasn't increased, and actually youth access and interest in cannabis, particularly in the age group of 15 to 17, has decreased 10% prior to legalization. So those are all really encouraging figures, and again, allow us to exchange a tremendous amount of positive conversational currency with regulators and community stakeholders.
Absolutely. So what piece of advice could you give, or what would you love to share, either at a kind of high level, Canada's open for business in the sector, or even at a grassroots level? What are the two messages that you'd love to share with a big audience?
Yeah, two messages. Wow. Well, the first, I think, and this is the biggest lesson I've learned in the last year, would be learning the wisdom of being patient during times of inactivity. I really look at the development of regulations as, it can really feel painful a lot of the time to endure, the limitations around advertising, promotion, to be restricted in your operating hours and practices as compared to other intoxicating substances like alcohol or cigarettes. But, again, learning the wisdom of being patient during that process and staying positive and purposeful, and looking to be collaborative rather than competitive. And then the other thing I would say is really, it's better to be kind than it is to be right. And that particularly is effective with regulators and with community stakeholders, because despite the level of ignorance and indifference and inertia that you'll endure as someone in the cannabis space or even a consumer yourself, blowing smoke or spitting facts or stats at people doesn't win anybody over. They only remember really how you make them feel. And so if you can be kind and considerate and circumspect in your approach to their feelings and the history and the legacy of prohibition, you're going to win a lot more people over in terms of really bringing them on board with the value that the regulated environment creates. So really, again, just to recap, really appreciating the wisdom of being patient during times of inactivity, and then it's better to be kind than it is to be right. And that'd be the lessons I've learned so far.
There's, I've seen a lot of momentum as far as resources and mediums and conferences and things. If you could pick two, must read or absorb events or conferences, like I said, or mediums that somebody in the business of cannabis should know about, either a periphery business or somebody directly involved, what would those be? Where will you definitely show up?
Well, I think the Lift & Co Expo is a must.
Yep.
For me, that's Christmas. I get my entire industry family together. We are organizing events and after parties and engagements and meetings, looking to build the capacity of the industry. There's a ton of media that comes around that as well, that are looking to get informed and inspired around what cannabis is doing. So Lift & Co Expo, that happens here generally in Vancouver in January, I believe, and in May in Toronto. Those are the two main epicenters for it. Excuse me. An absolutely tremendous event, recommended every year. And we're seeing tremendous evolution in terms of the types of stakeholders that are engaged with that. And then, in terms of publications, I mean, there's so many out there. It really just kind of, what message are you looking to access? I mean, honestly, I would say go into your local retailer. whatever that is, your local regulated retailer, they're often the hub of exchange that'll bring together and curate a lot of that understanding for you. So, obviously get out to the conference if you can, that's kind of the macro, but then take time to really visit your local retailer. Ask questions. These are some of the most passionate people you'll ever meet in your life, particularly the private retailers. They've sacrificed so much, endured so much, spent so much, and still endure a tremendous amount of stigma as they progress. And to go in there and just really ask questions and be engaged, there's so much to pull from there. I know, Ben Miner on Sirius XM has a great show that's emerging in the cannabis space as well. I know there's a great piece Inside the Jar that's coming along, Botanique Magazine. There's a lot of great resources out there to access, but the hub of exchange for it all is really a local private retailer. So I always encourage people, even if you're not a cannabis consumer yourself, at least get informed and empowered with the right information, and meet people who are actually involved in the industry, not just people who talk about people who are involved in the industry. Go out and meet a private retailer. These are salt of the earth people who care about their community. They invest in their community. They're involved in their community. And they care about the people they hire. They care about the people that they curate their product assortment for. They have amazing relationships with their suppliers that they can bring a lot of insight and value to the table for you as a consumer, or someone who may have someone in your life that is a consumer. So that would be my piece of advice, really. Go check out Lyft, and then go check out a local retailer.
Well, I will for sure go into a Kiaro store just to check it out, because if we meet some salt of the earths like Andrew or Gordon, it's going to be fantastic. And listen, I'm mindful of time. I know it was tough to catch your attention in between opening up all these retail stores. So I'm pretty excited to
forgive me. Yes,
catch you. No, and that's totally fine. I appreciate it, Andrew.
I'm happy to come back on again.
Well, and we will. I know we'll do some follow-up stuff. But my question to you right now is, how can we follow up with you post podcast?
Yeah, well, you can definitely reach out to me via email. It's just andrew@Kiaro.com. My social media tags, ATG Van City on Twitter and on Instagram. My Kiaro is our company's Instagram. So I definitely encourage you to check us out there. And we're always in the media, so just Google search. There's tons of great content there. We really try and put out positive, purposeful messaging and really shape the conversation in the right direction, so that all community stakeholders can feel a part of the conversation. And we're excited to be as inclusive as possible. We want to create an inviting and appealing and socially responsible model that really everyone can be proud of. And again, we want to be that space that you're okay with bringing your mom and your colleague or your brother to. We really curate these spaces as best we can, with the design focused in mind, to really bring the best solution offerings to the table to meet consumers' needs. And we're really proud of what we've been able to deliver so far.
Are you allowed to tell, or is it a secret as far as where the next retail outlet's going to be?
Sure. Well, we're opening up in Port Moody, March 20th is the date we have for our soft opening. Our grand opening will be around April 20th. In Nanaimo and Vancouver will be our next two locations.
Hometown.
And so those are, I know, exactly. I'm extremely excited to be there. These are ground zero for where the roots of cannabis have really been fostered and fomented. And so we're very excited to be a part of those communities. We'll be looking to that late spring, early summer. And we'll keep you posted for sure. We're excited to be a part of every community we launch in. And particularly with Nanaimo, we've built some great roots there. I have some great friends in that community. We're going to be making some substantial contributions to some really quality endeavors that align nicely with the official community plan. We're going to be contributing to the Housing Legacy Fund, and really, looking to create collective solution building opportunities between not only industry representatives, but the whole community at large. And we're really excited to be launching there as soon as possible. And we'll definitely keep you posted. Thank you so much.
Well, and let me just say from a heartfelt, there's something in this conversation, Andrew, that I haven't experienced before, is how much community engagement you as a company, which I'm going to actually turn around because you probably won't take the credit, but I will give you credit to say, when you come from a nonprofit and a community building and a passion driven purpose, you know, it totally comes out in everything that you do, working with companies that you do. So congratulations on that.
I'm honored by that. Thank you.
Andrew Gordon, thank you so much for joining us here on Canada's podcast, and we will see you soon in Port Moody and Nanaimo.